Hello, hello. Welcome to Bring the Word to Life on April 8th. I'm excited to have you here and excited to be back with you. We are chugging through our study in Philippians, week 6. We are finally finishing out chapter 2. There has been so much good stuff that we've been studying in chapters 1 and 2 that it's taken us 6 weeks to get to this point, but we are now finished with chapter 2 tonight as we go through this together. Then the next 4 weeks will be spent on chapters 3 and chapter 4. So I'm excited to be with you and digging into this book that's normally referenced as the book of joy, and it absolutely is. There's a lot of talk about joy, how to have joy, how to possess joy, what is joy, all those things. Definitely an underlying tone of it is contentment, right? How are we content? And when we are content, what happens? And joy and peace are definitely what Paul talks about here, and unity. Again, lots of good things in this book of Philippians, and I'm so excited that you are here with me to dig in once again as we get going here. So real quick, I want to go through the verse. Philippians 2:29 is the verse this week. So receive him in the Lord with all joy and honor such men. So why did I choose that verse? We will get to that when we go into our discussion time of the questions. But let me say it one more time for all of us. Say it with me. If you're watching with me, say it with me. So receive him in the Lord with all joy and honor such men. Philippians 2:29. So that's a great verse to remember, especially in those hard moments when maybe we don't want to receive someone with joy. Maybe we don't want to receive someone at all. And if we have to receive them, it's certainly not with joy. I've had those moments, absolutely. And so this is a good verse to remember in those times. Okay, Janine, you need to receive them with joy. And yes, this is talking about godly men here. This is talking about good. It's talking about Timothy and specifically Epaphroditus, and we'll get into why the qualifications that Paul gave him to why we should receive him in the Lord with all joy and honor him. But it makes me think of sometimes even in our church leaders, honoring the men that God has put before us. And sometimes it's hard to do that with joy. So we'll talk about that. But I love this verse. It's a good reminder. So receive him in the Lord with all joy and honor such men. Okay, so I'm going to pull up here. I'm going to read here from my computer today. We're going to read Philippians 2 verses starting in verse 19, and we're going to read through verse 30 because that's the passage we studied this week. So join me. Verse 19, I hope in the Lord Jesus to send Timothy to you soon, so that I too may be cheered by news of you. For I have no one like him who will be genuinely concerned for your welfare. For they all seek their own interests, not those of Jesus Christ. But you know Timothy's proven worth, how as a son with a father, he has served with me in the gospel. I hope, therefore, to send him just as soon as I see how it will go with me. And I trust in the Lord that shortly I myself will come also. I have thought it necessary to send to you Epaphroditus, my brother and fellow worker and fellow soldier, and your messenger and minister to my need, for he has been longing for you all and has been distressed because you heard that he was ill. Indeed, he was ill, near death, but God had mercy on him, and not only on him, but on me also, lest I should have sorrow upon sorrow. I am the more eager to send him, therefore, that you may rejoice at seeing him again, and that I may be less anxious. So, receive him in the Lord with all joy and honor such men, for he nearly died for the work of Christ, risking his life to complete what was lacking in your service to me. So much to unpack there. God, would you just go before us now as we unpack all these truths that you have in something that maybe seems that it doesn't always apply to us, because it's talking about some men from the from back in the day, but God, would you reveal your truths that would apply with us today? Thank you, Lord. Yeah, this is a section of Philippians, I'll be honest, that I don't always focus on. Sometimes just kind of skip through it and go to the meat of the other chapters because there's so much goodness. But there is a lot packed in here, and I hope you were able to find it this week. Let's dive into our questions as we get going here. Question number 1: How does Paul say with certainty that he will be released from prison and come visit the people of Philippi? If you remember in verse 24, it says, "And I would trust in the Lord that shortly I myself will come also." He's trusting in the Lord. He is putting his hope in the Lord in verse 19. I hope in the Lord, right? He didn't know. Paul didn't know 100% that God was going to get him out. He had before. This is not his first rodeo. This is not his first time in prison. And so he has seen God work before. But what I appreciate about this is Paul was so confident in his purpose, in who he was and why he was there and what he was doing, that he had no doubt of who he had no doubt who he was serving. And then, so therefore he had no doubt that he would be released, right? Because earlier he says to live as Christ and to die as gain. And so to live, he's like, if I'm going to live for Christ, we're going to get the message out there and I'm going to be released from here because that's only furthering the gospel, right? But if he doesn't, if he dies, then he also knows that that's his, and it doesn't matter to him. So it's not that he's so confident that he will, in fact, 100% be released. It's he lived his life. Well, first of all, he was content, right? We talked about like the content part of this chapter or this book. His life was content. He was living a content life. He didn't care. Well, maybe he cared, but he didn't focus on the things that were going bad or the things that were going right. He was just like, this is where God has me, and I'm happy. I am content. I am just plugging through life. He lived his life with hope and joy, not with that state of like, woe is me, I'm in prison. Why won't God help me already? All the things you can think through, all sorts of negative thoughts that he could have been having, but he didn't have those. Instead, he had joy and hope and trust. So we can take that as encouragement, that we need to know our purpose just as strongly as Paul did. And then we need to trust the Lord in it and operate our life with joy and hope, just trusting like, okay, God, I know you're going to deliver me from this. When I have a conflict in my life, I go, God, I know you're going to deliver me from this. I don't know when, and I don't know how, but I know you will, right? That is trust. That is faith. And that's what Paul was doing. I don't know how, God, I don't know when, but I know that I'm going to be released. So just hopefully that encourages us in those moments. I saw that and I was like, that's such a good thing. That's such a good thing. He was so confident. And we can be too. Because of our joy and hope in the Lord. So number 2, what does proven character or proven worth look like? How is one's character proven? Okay, so I love this because Timothy and Epaphroditus are the 2 men that Paul talks about here in 19 through 30. And they are examples of what Paul has been saying all the way up until now. You guys remember all the verses going back to verse 27 of chapter 1. It says, only let your manner of life be worthy of the gospel of Christ. And then verse 2 of chapter 2, complete my joy by being of the same mind, having the same love. Verse 4, let each of you look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. Verse 5, have this in mind among yourselves, which is yours of Christ. All the things that Paul has been talking to us about and instructing us to have in our life, these character traits, so to speak, Timothy and Epaphroditus had them. He's saying, okay, y'all, I've said to do this. I've said to do this. guess what? Timothy and Epaphroditus, they're meeting that. They are shining examples of what I've been talking about. This is the proven character. So when we come down here to so Timothy, verse 22 says, but you know Timothy's proven worth, because it's not just a thought. Like, Timothy's shown himself, and Epaphroditus has as well shown themselves to be like the character that Paul has just talked about. All the things, and Paul's saying it's possible. The proven worth. You've seen it. I've talked about it. These are the men. So I'm going to pose this. I'm not going to answer it because I think I want you to think about it a little bit. How is one's character proven? How is your character proven? Okay, maybe I will answer it a little bit. I just want to jog that thought for you a little. Time, actions, words, service, integrity even comes into play. So think about that, ponder it. Think about your own character and how has it been proved, right? You've already proved a character, right? Your character, your life has already been proved to people in your life. What are they seeing? And if you want to change that into something different, then what does that look like? How is one's character proven? Something for us to think about in our own lives. Number 3, what does it look like to receive someone with all joy? Why and how do we hold men like him in high regard? Oh, I love this because Paul prays in joy in chapter 1, and then here in chapter 2, he says, receive him with all joy. And what I love about this is he's highlighting, guys, there are probably, I feel like in our day and age, we are so nervous about highlighting certain people, spotlighting purpose, right? Everybody's got to win. It's like, oh, this is my, there's no star pupils anymore, or it's hard to give someone recognition. Do you understand what I'm saying? I hope you do. It's hard to give someone recognition anymore. But Paul does not shy away from it. He's like, guys, these are the people I want you to emulate. These are the people doing it right. You have Timothy and you have Epaphroditus, and they're doing it well. And so I love that he says, receive him with joy, and then hold men like him in high regard. It's okay. The message I'm getting from this is it's okay to highlight someone or honor someone. We don't have to worry about offending someone because they got left out, or we don't see them as good as somebody else. It's not, when we highlight someone, it's not to put someone else down. It's to build the other person up and maybe use them as an example. So I think we need to not shy away from holding people up and honoring them and highlighting them, holding them in high regard, not putting them on a pedestal where they're perfect, and when they sin, they disappoint us. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying lifting them up, highlighting them, rejoicing over them, saying thank you. It's interesting. Paul says that the church of Philippi, though they desired to take care of Paul, they weren't able to meet his needs. But Epaphroditus stepped up and was able to meet those needs. He didn't say that to make them feel bad. He said, but no, what you couldn't do, this man did. And so I want you to know that. I want you to know that he did what you sent him to do. It's accountability there, but also saying, hey, he's awesome. He's awesome. And I want you to know it. And I appreciate that because I think it's really refreshing that in this politically correct society that we don't get to say that sometimes. I mean, sometimes we do, but it's a little more reserved in how we say that. So I I enjoyed this, and it made me start to think through who are some men in my life, particularly, and some women teaching women, and being in that realm of mentorship absolutely could apply. Who are the men and the women then in your life that, first of all, you receive with all joy, um, and then honor them? How do we honor them? I'm going to encourage you to come up with 3 ways that you can honor someone in your church leadership this week. It doesn't have to be the main pastor. It doesn't have to be a pastor that you work with. It doesn't. It could be a layman, right? It could be just a volunteer. And when I say just a volunteer, that's not to um, say that what they do is less than by any means. I just mean it doesn't have to be a paid pastor. Honor such men. Um, who in your church body, in your church family, let's start there. There may be people outside of the church that would qualify, but the men and women that are qualifying as God's servant, are you receiving them with joy, and are you honoring them? So I'm going to ask you to come up with 3. That's my charge for you this week. Come up with 3 things, 3 people that you could honor, and maybe talk about it as a family. And how do you honor them this week, or this month? Um, it could be just with a card. It could be with a meal. It could be with a conversation. There's all sorts of ways you could get creative, especially if you have kids. Bring them in on it. But how can we honor such men? Because I think it's important. That's what Paul is telling us here, right? He says, "So receive him in the Lord with all joy, and honor such men." God, thanks so much for this study that you're giving us about these 2 godly men that were in Paul's life. They were his um, helpers, and they did so, with such love and genuine ability, as well as desire. And so, God, I just thank you for their example. Help us to be like them, just like Paul is instructing us in the rest of First and chapter 1, chapter 2, and he will continue to teach us in 3 and 4. Um, help us to live like Timothy and Epaphroditus did, God, and help us to honor those men and women in our lives that are that you've asked us to. So, God, would you just do that? Would you go as we go into this weekend? Help us to honor such men. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, guys, thanks for joining me. You guys have a great week, and we will see you next time with starting chapter 3 on Monday. All right, we'll see you then. Bye.